When I was 15, I worked at a very popular pizza place in Canada that rhymes with nut. It was run and managed by a couple of college kids who thought they were the big bosses, the kings of running a pizza joint. Honestly, they were in their 20s and acted like they owned the world just because they managed a few ovens and a pizza counter. At the time, I was in between jobs and didn't really want to work at a fast food place, but my first choice, which was a job at the local arena, fell through. I was too young to handle certain chemicals and equipment they used in the pool. It was frustrating because I had to wait months until I could apply again, and I didn't want to sit around doing nothing, so I decided to bite the bullet and apply for the pizza place. I got the job, and they hired me for working in the kitchen. I started learning the ropes, washing dishes, prepping ingredients, and cleaning stations. Within a month, they wanted me to learn how to make dough. At first, I wasn't thrilled because making dough meant waking up at 6 a.m. every weekend to have it ready before the restaurant opened at noon. I loved my weekends and I didn't want to sacrifice them. I told them I'd learn, but I didn't want to do it every weekend. They promised that I'd only have to work one weekend dough shift a month. Feeling like I had a fair deal, I agreed. I convinced my partner in crime, Scott, to agree to the same arrangement. We both learned quickly and became good at making the dough. Within 2 weeks of training, they started scheduling us back-to-back weekend shifts. I worked every Saturday, Scott every Sunday. When I told my boss about it, she laughed. She didn't take it seriously, and honestly, neither did anyone else. The entire staff, all servers in their 20s, thought it was hilarious. We, the new kids, were the joke of the pizza joint. They knew we needed jobs and weren't going to quit, so they found it funny to exploit us. Then, one Saturday, my parents told me that the arena had called me back for another interview. I went, and they said I'd be offered the job 2 weeks later, the day after my birthday. I asked if they needed anyone else, and I mentioned Scott. They said to hand in his resume and they'd set up an interview. That's when the idea of petty revenge hit me. The following Saturday, I went into work at the pizza place and did absolutely nothing. I sat around, drinking chocolate milk, hanging out in the booths, twirling my thumbs. I wasn't helping anyone, I wasn't making dough, I wasn't prepping anything. When the staff showed up for opening, I was there with my apron and name tag in hand. I calmly said, I quit. My boss laughed and said, whatever, we were going to fire you anyway. She even commented that if she were me, she wouldn't have shown up at all and just left them in trouble. I smiled and said, nah, I stayed all morning and made no dough, so you still need to pay me for my shift. The look on her face was priceless. Because of me, they didn't have any dough ready, which meant they couldn't open the restaurant properly. They had to close for the day. The chaos was amazing. And to top it off, Scott repeated the same method the next day, making them close the place again. After that, both Scott and I started working at the arena for the rest of high school. And whenever we met, we laughed about that story, remembering how 2 teenagers managed to shut down a pizza place without lifting a finger, well, except for drinking chocolate milk. Making dough wasn't simple, by the way. It was a non-stop grind, mixing the dough, pulling it out, starting the next batch, mixing oil pans, portioning out the dough, putting it in pans, filling racks, putting it in the speed proofer for an hour, then into cold storage, and repeat. Non-stop for 6 hours. On occasion, you could use day-old dough in a pinch, but it didn't hold up and the pizza came out flat. The boss always kept the staff as thin as possible, so running the front and back of the house while making dough on the spot would have been impossible. We were a small town, but the pizza place was the busiest in the area. Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays with their cheap buffet were absolute madness. The chaos, the orders flying in, the customers waiting, and the staff scrambling, it was insanity. And there we were, 2 teenagers, messing everything up on purpose. That's how 2 15-year-olds managed to close a popular pizza place for 2 days with just patience, chocolate milk, and a little bit of clever rebellion. Moral of the story: never underestimate a kid who knows how to wait for the right moment. And sometimes, petty revenge can be the sweetest satisfaction, especially when it comes with no real effort.